This is Python's Paradise. This is your host, Greg Gilbert, aka the Python Hyena, straight out of Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. And folks, I have a great show here today on December 19th, 2022. Finally, I get to talk to a guest from what I consider Mel Brooks's masterpiece. You know, I'm talking about Young Frankenstein. Yeah, I still got the price tag on it, but still, great movie. I've had this for a while. This was back when, I don't know how long I've had this film, but nonetheless, Mel Brooks's best film. And I have one of the villagers on the show with me today, villager number 3, as they call him, Joe. I have Randolph Dobbs himself. How do you do, Randolph?
I'm very well, thank you, and glad to be with you.
Yeah, you're listed as villager number 3. Now, why didn't you get to be villager 1 and 2?
I don't know how they did that. Through my wife, I actually knew Gene Wilder through his wife. He and Mel Brooks had co-written the screenplay, and when it came time for a casting, they gave me an opportunity to read for it, and they wanted to kind of replicate those black and white films from the 40s. And so they had all of the cast members that that were serving as background have Cockney accents. And the reason why is because those old films were made in the day when they used British background people, and so that it kind of had that character to it. They spent a lot of time and money to recreate that kind of black and white feel, even though it was obviously an era of color film. And they found the same guy that did the special effects, all of the radiating arcs of energy and so on. And they found the same guy that did those films back in the 40s for Universal, and he still had those devices. So they arranged for him to, bring them to the set and to operate them. And it was kind of recreating an era, but in a funny way. And so it was so much fun doing it. I almost couldn't stop laughing. So it was really great.
I still can't stop laughing at it. Like I said, Mel Brooks has done some great stuff, but I think like the producers, Blazing Saddles, Silent
Yeah.
Movie, Spaceballs, you can go on, but I think Young Frankenstein's his greatest achievement. And it's interesting because, I had uh Sandy or excuse not Sandy, oh, why is her name? Boris Karloff's daughter I've had on here.
Oh, okay. Uh-huh.
Oh, why is her name escaping me? How bad is that? Anyway, I had her on here, and I had Bella Lugosi Jr. on here as well. So I got to talk to um, some family of some of the performers from those old Universal monster films, and
Hmm.
I think one of the great strength. Number one, I'm glad he shot this in black and white. I think it's so greatly added to it. It's beautiful in black and white, and it adds to the ominous effect as well. But I also love the fact that as funny as it is, you can tell they took it seriously, and
Yeah.
that was a big part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They kind of hit the bullseye and being trying to be funny, but also trying to be taken seriously. So there were times when it was over the top, like in Putting on the Ritz, when it was crazy funny.
Mhm.
But there were also times when it was to be taken seriously, when they tried to recapture the monster with the music and with throwing a net over him, so on. So it kind of hit that fine line between the two things of comedy and drama.
Yeah, Sarah Karloff, that was her name.
Sarah Carla.
Yeah, yeah. And she also enjoyed this movie, you know. So before I talk more about this in detail, I would like to get a little bit of your background and what led you to getting into, because you've got some movie credits. So
Yeah.
yeah, what led you to get into the arts?
Well, I was attracted to acting, and I started out in the late '60s,
Hmm.
and I went to San Francisco. I became a part of the American Conservatory Theater there, and I was cast in a prison play that had started in San Quentin Prison called The Cage, and we toured the U.S. and we wound up off Broadway. In fact, we were in the same theater that Fortune and Men's Eyes had played the previous season, and we did very well. And I was on television as part of that play, and I uh, I had a great time. But I really wanted to be in film, so I left New York and I came to LA to start a career. I got married, and one thing led to another. I started doing episodic television, the Waltons, Joe Forrester, and then I had the opportunities I mentioned through my wife, who knew Gene's wife, um, to audition for Mel Brooks for Young Frankenstein, and he did cast me as this villager, and I mean, I was happy to do anything. And and by the way, I should say that Mel Brooks and Gene Wilder were extremely kind to me. And anytime you see like background people like the villagers, there's three of us that were always in front, and we were the ones that had lines and that we would speak for the townspeople. And I think the reason why they did that was, again, they were trying to recreate how films were made back in the '40s. And at that time, they would have two or three uh, characters as village people that people would recognize. So we were always in front, and if there was a line that needed to be said, it was usually one of us. So it was a lot of fun.
I get a kick out of the shot of you guys going through the dead forest there. One of them runs into a tree.
Yeah, yeah,
Kind of backs off there. You mentioned the Waltons. I've had John Walmsley on here about 5 years ago. He was in the
uh-huh.
Waltons. Yep, he was a great guy to talk to. Um, yeah, you know what? I heard Brooks do an interview, and I agree with him 100%. Comedies don't get recognized enough for awards, and I agree with him that Gene Wilder really should have got nominated for Best Actor for this
Yeah,
movie.
he was terrific in it. He's a very talented actor.
Hmm.
I was in another film that he directed, actually, wrote and directed, called um, it's with Dom DeLuise. The
Dom DeLuise.
world's greatest lover.
Okay, yeah, I got that up here. Okay, you're yes man number one. Okay,
Right, and that
yeah.
was a lot. That was hysterical.
Hmm.
And at one point during the filming, he went into a Shakespearean soliloquy and just kind of spontaneously said this. Obviously, he had memorized it from years back because he had trained in London, I think, at the Royal Academy or the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art, Lambda. And so he was classically trained. He was a brilliant actor. And, the strange thing between the two of them, Mel Brooks and Gene Wilder, was that Mel was always on. He always had a great sense of humor, and he always wanted to make people laugh and feel good. And it's just the way he was. He never turned off. whereas Gene was more introspective and quiet and gentle. And although he had a great sense of humor, it was something that he kind of could turn on and off. And he thought about it. He was more of a thinking, you know, cerebral kind of comedian, if I guess you could use that word to describe him. He had a good sense of humor, but he could be just a regular person too. So
He was brilliant in this. Even when they brought in the actual sets from Frankenstein, and yet the hair was going way up there. They captured that as a satire while still taking it seriously and still making it funny.
yeah,
Gene Wilder, I gotta say, he was brilliant in this, and like like in the classroom scene where he stabs his leg
then
accidentally.
tries to cover up so that no one knows.
He puts his other leg over top, and it's like class dismissed.
Right, as he's trying to hold on and maintain his cool.
Yeah, sad we lost Gene Wilder. I've had somebody on here from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory talked about him as well. Do you remember the last time you had saw him in person?
Well, I didn't, we went through a period where I didn't see him. I must have been in the early 80s, maybe was the last time that I saw him. He did a lot of other work and, liked to write, but then he went into a quiet spell, so, I mean, and he moved, he used to live in LA in Bel Air. And then he moved back east to Connecticut. And I think that's where he passed on. And no, I didn't have contact with him after the 80s.
Hmm.
But he was a brilliant actor, good guy, gentle soul. Uh, he was a good guy, and he was very kind to me. He and Mel both were very kind to me.
Mel's still around. He's in his
He's still
late
around, he's still
90s.
working.
Oh my goodness,
Yeah. And he's got to be in his mid 90s.
Well, Carl Reiner passed away not long ago, and they were talking about him and Dick Van Dyke and Mel Brooks being past 95,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
and I don't know what it takes for somebody to get there like that. I mean, Kirk Douglas made it to 103, so hey, but
Yeah.
but Mel Brooks is definitely, and he married well with Anne Bancroft.
Hmm.
Yeah, and but you mentioned that he was often on.
Yeah. He liked to entertain. He liked people to laugh and to have fun. And so he would go to, and if he didn't laugh, he would just try harder. So, you
Give an
know,
example of this on Young Frankenstein, something that you saw that maybe we weren't privy to.
well, he was less entertaining as he was directing because he took that seriously and he was a good director.
Mhm.
Um, there was the man that played the monster,
Peter
um,
Boyle.
Peter Boyle.
Hmm.
Uh, Sometimes Mel had trouble not laughing at some of the things that were done, so they'd have to take another take because he was laughing. So he was a really kind of fun person to be with, and even as a director, even though he took it seriously, he was the first one there in the morning, kind of, and the last one to leave, and he worked hard at it. And directing a motion picture is not easy work. You really have to know what you're doing. He told me a story once about how when he did the film The 12 Steps,
Hmm.
that was his first film, and it was a big hit. And but he had never directed, and he was amazed at how much power a film director has on the set. That's the person in charge. If they say, left, everybody goes left. If they say right, everybody goes right. It has a lot of power. And at some point, he wasn't sure about, the mechanics of filmmaking so much, because this was his first film. And he was going to shoot a long scene, and he thought he didn't know how long the film canister would last. So he said, change the roll. And when you change the roll, that's actually an expensive process. So, because you're taking the one roll and you're putting it aside, you're not going to use it again, probably. You're taking a brand new one. So it's many thousands of dollars just to change the roll. And he had them do that, and then later realized that there was plenty of film in the old canister, in the old reel. And so it was just one of those things where you had to kind of know from experience, but he learned quickly. And he did that film Blazing Saddles, which really kind of set him going as a major force in comedic film. And then Young Frankenstein, as I mentioned, he and Gene co-wrote that. And as you pointed out, they took the work seriously, and they hit the fine line between drama and comedy, because it was kind of both. What do they call a dramedy? When it's a mix. So,
Yeah.
but he was a good guy. He really cared about people. He wanted everyone to have a good time, and that's kind of what drove him to kind of tell jokes all of the time. So he wasn't so much joking while the process was going on of directing, but in between takes, or at lunch, or at breaks, and so on, he wanted to make sure everyone was having a good time.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, this film looked like everybody was having a good time,
Oh, we did.
Yeah.
One of
One
the
of the
great.
I was gonna say one of the funniest scenes in the movie for me, and it's a scene that still makes me laugh to this day, is the cameo by Gene Hackman as the blind man.
Oh,
You know,
yeah,
and
yeah.
of course, it's a take on Bride of Frankenstein, where Frankenstein, enters the hut of the hermit, the lonely hermit, and I thought this was brilliant. Gene Hackman go, a visitor is all I want, a kind soul, help, blah 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 blah, and then suddenly, Peter Boyle as the monster bursts in the door, growls, and he goes, "Thank you, Lord," and he brings him in, and I thought it was hilarious. Like he was trying to pour soup for him. It kept landing on the monster's lap and all this stuff, and he's he accidentally lights his thumb on fire instead of a cigar, and goes, "Please come back. I was gonna make espressos."
Yeah.
I think his timing on that was off the charts.
Well, he's another one that's a brilliant actor. He came out of the actor studio, and he did the French Connection in the
Yep.
start of the 70s, either 69 or 70.
Hmm.
And that made him, a star. And he wanted to do it. He apparently knew Gene and Mel, and asked if there was a role for him. And the only one they had that was suitable was this blind hermit character. And I think it was all done in one day,
It
and
was great.
which is really going fast for movies, to do that whole scene in one day. And Gene later said that everyone was surprised that a star of his stature would want to do just a kind of small role, but it was something that he wanted. And Gene said that that Gene Hackman was secure in his stardom, and wasn't threatened by the act of taking a small speaking role. So, and it turned out well, and everybody recognizes that he did a great job, and it's a very funny scene. And I can't picture someone else doing it. He does it so well. It'd be hard to picture someone else doing it.
Yeah, and I love the scene with another one that I remember from Frankenstein. You got Anne Beasley, that's the little girl who just, I love it when she tearing the pedals off and, you know, throws it down the and she goes, "What shall we throw in next?" Peter Boyle just gives that double take, because we know what happens in Frankenstein. He drops the girl in the river there and she drowns. In
Yeah.
this one, that's a double take. And that had a nice little happy ending to it too, that
Oh,
scene, with
it,
the teeter totter.
yeah. Yeah. It was such a well-written scene. Brilliant, really. And Young Frankenstein stands out in a class by itself, that there aren't a lot of spoofs on horror films that really connect with people, and this really
Exactly.
connects.
Did you meet Peter Boyle?
I did, and I was going to mention that, in that era, if you were a part of the background and you didn't have lines, you weren't really an actor, quote unquote. And so there was a kind of class stigma to being, just part of the background. And so he didn't talk to us, and there was three of us usually, and who had lines, and he kind of treated us like we were part of the background. And then someone told him, these guys are actually actors. And then he came up and apologized and said, I didn't realize. I thought you were just part of the background people. And we shook hands, and so and he was very friendly from then on. But up until then, there was a kind of stigma over being background as opposed to being a part of the Screen Actors Guild.
And then, of course, I just took this out of the slipcover too. This is a better look at the cover without that tag on it.
Yeah,
Yeah, there you
I
go.
remember that. Yeah, there was a building on Wilshire Boulevard in Westwood where the whole side of the building was painted in that poster, and
Beautiful.
yeah, it was brilliant.
Yeah, there's some other performance I got to bring up, Madeline Kahn, especially when she had the Bride of Frankenstein hair. Madeline Kahn, one of the funniest women ever.
Yeah,
She could be
yeah,
frumpy, like in What's Up, Doc, or she could be sexy as hell, like in Blazing Saddles.
yeah,
And she could be this, where she's kind of a cross between the two.
yeah. Oh, well, she was very talented, a very talented person. In fact, I think the casting generally, I mean, they really had great talent to choose from. All those people, Peter Boyle, as you mentioned, and Gene Hackman, of course, and Gene Wilder, and the fellow who played Igor,
Igor,
Marty,
okay, I was going to bring
Marty
you about
Feldman.
Marty Feldman.
Yeah, he was very funny, and like Gene, he was also more of a serious person who wasn't cracking jokes, like Mel, and getting people to laugh. He took it seriously, even though his character was a funny character. And we were kind of teasing him once about, saying he was from England, and saying he had a British accent normally, but we would tease him because he did that. You've got it, master, and we would say that to him. And after a while, he was bothered by it. He's asked us to stop, and he wasn't in very good health. He didn't. I think he died just a few years later after the making of the
Actually,
film.
he died about 9 years, 8 or 9 years later, at just as they were finishing Yellowbeard,
Ah,
which came out
okay.
in '83. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So, yep.
Well,
But he
even
was
even then, he wasn't in very good health, and he was taking vitamins, which he referred to as vitamins. And he was, I don't guess he chewed them or something, but he was always taking something to kind of, and he would say like, yeah, I'm not feeling well and stuff like that. So it was difficult for him. Even then, he didn't have a lot of stamina.
mm, but it's not. Igor. It's Igor.
Igor, yeah, of course.
And he goes, well, I thought it was everybody said Igor. And he goes, well, they were wrong then, weren't they?
Yeah,
Oh,
he
he's
had
so
such a
funny.
great sense
Yeah. And Terry Garr, she's still with
of
us. She's
regard.
also having some health issues, but she had a really great career.
She did, yeah.
Yep.
And that was her first big film.
Hmm. I like that. Roll in the hay, roll in the hay. Marty Feldman, their wolf, their wolf, their castle. He goes, why are you saying it like that? I thought you wanted to. No. Okay, I'm game. I love that. And oh gee, who else I gotta bring up is Kenneth Mars, so underrated. Him with the wooden hand. He go
The wooden arm, yeah.
oh, he was funny, and he's done a lot of great stuff as well. Um, so how long were you on set for this movie for?
I think of about 2.5 weeks, and it was really great. And while they were filming, I could come whenever I wanted, even if I wasn't working that day, and watch the filming. And I learned a lot. And they would, if you ask a question, they would take the time to kind of explain why they were doing things a certain way and how they were doing it. At one point, there was a block of wood between me and the camera, and I thought it was just like it was going to be in the way and someone might trip over it. So I picked it up and tossed it aside, and the cinematographer got upset because they were using that as a mark for their focus. So they had to stop filming and bring that little block of wood back. I didn't realize, so
Mm.
but it's that kind of thing where there's a lot that goes into filmmaking, and it just takes time to learn.
Were you at the premiere for the movie?
I was well. They had a number of them. I was at one of them, and that was exciting. And my father came to see me in a Hollywood film, and so it was a big deal. We had a great time, and as I say, they were all very kind to me, and it was just one of the high points of my acting career.
Well, let's talk about the world's greatest lover. Now, you're yes man number one, but who was the world's greatest lover? Was it Gene or was it Dom DeLuise? I don't know. Something tells me
Gene
it
was
must have
the
been Dom.
Yeah, Gene was the well, the joke is that Dom DeLuise is playing the role of a movie mogul called Adolf Zitz,
Hmm.
and they another studio, a rival studio, has the great talent Rudolph Valentino, and so they
Hmm.
thought, well, we need to get someone like him. So in fact, we'll have a contest to see who's the world's greatest lover. So they send out records that people could play to coach them through auditioning to be the world's greatest lover, and they send it across the country. And Gene gets one of these records, and he follows the directions, and shows up to audition for the role. So the
Hmm.
whole thing is, who will be the world's greatest lover? Gene winds up getting the role, but the whole thing is like the antics that they go through, and the other people who try out at the same time. All of that is very funny. And so this producer, played by Dom DeLuise, he's a funny character, and Dom DeLuise is another one of those people that likes to make people laugh
Yeah.
and people happy. So he also kind of is always on, not or he's passed on now, but
Mm.
uh, at that time, he was doing well, and he was very funny fellow. I had a lot of background in acting, actually, and but he liked to entertain people in between takes. And again, it was very hard not to laugh while they were filming it, would, and because if you laughed, and that gets in the way, but they had to take the take over, so you had to, like, muffle your hand over your mouth to keep from making any noise. But it was hysterical, and there were things that he did that were so funny. I got an ache in my side just from laughing.
Oh, I know that feeling.
Yeah, and there were things that there was one thing that he did where he's upset and he's kind of going berserk over something, which the character kind of had that as part of his personality, and he grabs his own head and he shoves it into a wall, and he starts making up lines because Dom DeLuise is a naturally funny person, and at one point he's like waving his arms, and he tells his yes men to go out and get a record, make a record, and we ask him, well, what kind of record? And he says, a round record, and so he goes on and on, complaining about how he has to do everything himself, and it's so hard, and he exhausts himself, and he lets his arms drop. Of course, his head is in a wall, and he says it, my head is in a wall. And it was so funny to hear him say that, which wasn't part of the script, and they didn't use it in the film. And I later asked Gene, sorry,
That's okay.
I later asked Gene, well, why didn't you use that take where he says, my head is in a wall? It seems so funny. He says, well, I know what Dom is capable of, and I know how funny he can really be. And he's doing great, but I want it all within this character. So, that's why. And even though we all thought it was hysterical that he would say that, that wasn't really in that character's personality. So, as I say, Gene took things, and Mel took things very seriously, and he was, there were limits, there were guardrails to how extremely funny someone could be and still stay within the boundaries of the character.
And you almost answered my next question, but I'll get into it in more detail. The differences and similarity. I think I know some of the similarities of directing styles between Mel Brooks and Gene Wilder.
Well, Gene was definitely more serious.
Hmm.
He was methodical, and he knew a lot about it. He knew a lot about the craft of acting, and he was learning quickly about the craft of directing. And usually they discourage stars from directing their own work. And this was a case where is in World's Greatest Lover, where he wrote the screenplay, he directed the film, and he starred in it. So, triple threats are rare. You don't normally see that. And
Woody Allen's the only one I could think of right off the top of my head, but
right, right. And I think that the reason why you don't see it more often is because there's a tendency to lose perspective. If you're directing yourself as an actor, you know what you're trying to do, but as a director, you want to see it from a different point of view. The big picture. Take it all in encompassing the whole story and not just this one character. So it's hard to do that, and I thought World's Greatest Lover was a very funny film. It wasn't as successful as Young Frankenstein, but it was a very funny film. It's certainly worth watching even to this day.
and it's got another. I mentioned Madeline Kahn, but it's got another really funny woman in it, in Carol Kane.
Oh yeah, yeah, Carol Kane. Yeah, I first noticed her in doing a small part on Taxi, the television series Taxi, and she was very funny in that, and I didn't realize. And so I saw her for the first time on the set, and I didn't realize that she was that funny, but she is extremely good in that role of a kind of delicate person who is sensitive, and is easily hurt by, or their feelings get easily hurt. And so she did a great job in that role. And one of the funniest things I think of the World's Greatest Lover is her talking to some people who are trying to take advantage of her. And that's a funny scene where she winds up hitting the guy below the belt. And
Hmm.
it's a funny scene.
Well, you know what? It's interesting because the first time I recall seeing Carol Kane was in a horror movie called When a Stranger Calls. So
Oh,
it's interesting seeing how I now think of her in comedy, and she is extremely funny. And so, yeah, absolutely. Maybe she's the world's greatest lover. The last film I want to touch upon is Sunday Lovers, and which is an anthology. And of course, you're in the Gene Wilder segment.
yeah. And, it's one of those things where I was playing uh, a medical, like an aide, a medical aide, and I have interaction with Gene as the star of the film, and
Mhm.
uh, I mean, he was kind to just to even give me the role, which frankly I didn't do that well, and it wound up getting cut out of the film. I mean, you still get credit for it, you still get paid for it, residuals and all of that, but I don't think that it kind of hit the mark on what he was looking for. So he wound up cutting it out of the film. And I mean it. I understand totally. It doesn't go well if it doesn't fit. You can't use it.
Mhm.
So he went another way. I don't know how he solved the problem, but he went another way, and that scene just doesn't appear in the film. Which
Well,
is,
talk.
for actors starting out, which is like kind of one of those things where,
Mhm.
oh, my best work wound up on the cutting room floor. This was not the case.
Yeah.
I didn't do that well with it. It wasn't what he was looking for, and it got cut out. I understand totally, and I have no bad feelings over it.
Well, talk about what you've been doing since, because um, it seems like you kind of stepped away from acting and you're in a
I
whole
did.
new
I
profession. Talk about that.
Well, there's been like three phases in my life. One was starting out as an actor, getting some success, being in films and episodic television. And I had a good time, but I was also raising a family.
Hmm.
And, acting is kind of, the jobs are, few and far between when you're first starting out. So I needed something more stable that would bring money in on a regular basis. And I had a friend of mine, also an actor, and the two of us wound up becoming partners in a small chain of furniture stores, which I did for a long time here in the LA area. And we custom made furniture, we sold bedroom furniture, we did very well. And then, I had joined the Baha'i faith in the early 70s. So at one point, in the Baha'i faith, there is no clergy. And instead, the authority of the faith is vested in elected institutions. So in the mid 90s, I was elected to the governing body of the Baha'is of Los Angeles, the city of Los Angeles. And at the time, I had this business that I was doing, the bedroom furniture, and I had to close that because I couldn't do both things. So I focused on that kind of work, and I still do that kind of work now. Public affairs, external affairs on behalf of the Baha'i faith. Uh, the Baha'i Faith, the Baha'i Center is in the metro area, in the Baldwin Hills area of LA. But we have a community center in Encino, and we're opening up an external affairs office there. And so that's where I'm working now. And I like that kind of work. The Baha'i Faith, I don't know if you know the background, but it's a world religion that believes that all of the world's great faith traditions come from the same source and essentially teach the same spiritual message. You know, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. That's the golden rule that you find in the Bible.
Hmm.
And so that principle of putting the other person first and treating them like you would want to be treated, that's in all of the holy books of the world's great traditions. And so that's what the Baha'i Faith is about. It started in mid 19th century Persia. The title of the prophet founder of the Baha'i Faith is Baha'u'llah, which is an Arabic title that means glory of God. And so we believe that these great prophets, manifestations, Buddha, Moses, Jesus, they're all on the same level, and they were all like perfect mirrors turned towards the sun. So they reflect this divine light. They themselves are not God, but they reflect these divine qualities. So that's kind of in a nutshell what the Baha'i Faith is about.
Okay, I believe in Jesus. Yeah, but absolutely, absolutely. Okay. Um, so what's coming up? What's coming up in the future? Uh what are your current goals
Well,
other than getting ready for Christmas?
yeah. Well, I'm getting up there in years, and
Well, you're only 39.
yeah, thank you. I'm 73, and I enjoy the kind of service that I'm doing for the Baha'i Faith now in
Hmm.
public affairs. Um, I'm helping open up this office that we have at the Baha'i Community Center in Encino. Uh, that's taking a lot of my time. I do write as a journalist, and I enjoy that work very much. I enjoy writing, so that keeps me busy. And I liked acting a lot, but you really have to kind of focus on just acting. It's hard to do like having a lot of things going at the same time. Um, juggling lots of balls in the air at the same time. So what I'm doing is fine with me, and
Hmm.
I had fun while I was in my acting career.
Well, you worked
And
with some really great, talented people, and
I
so many of
did.
them are sadly gone too.
Well, that's, time marches on. So, we're only here in this world for, a
I think
couple
it
of
was
handfuls
last
of
year.
kids.
I think we lost the student in Young Frankenstein that
Yeah.
would call him Frankenstein, and he'd go
Right.
Frankenstein.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. No, he did a really great role. In fact, I was up
Yeah.
for that role too. And I'm glad I got what I got because it was a longer period of working. You
Hmm.
know, I worked for 2.5 weeks, whereas that role, well, I think was either just 1 or 2 days. So it was
Yeah.
better for me to have the smaller role.
Hmm. Yeah. And you get to watch and observe and learn on the set.
Oh, it was just awesome. It's a great experience, really, to be a part of making a, a, a classic film like that. It's in a
How
class.
awesome is that people are still
Yeah,
talking about this, huh?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, do you have any charities that you're involved with that you want to plug and promote on here?
Well, it's interesting. Uh, uh, the Baha'i Faith is set up so that you have to
Hmm.
be a member of the Baha'i Faith in order to contribute to the Baha'i Fund. So
Okay.
yeah, so that's not something that I can promote. But what I do like is Doctors Without Borders. So like on Facebook for your birthday, you can try to promote a charity. Like for my birthday, I'm asking friends to donate to, and I always pick that one, Doctors Without Borders, because I think that the kind of work that they do is really noble and it's difficult and it deserves our support.
Absolutely. I work at the hospital here, you know.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, I do housekeeping. I clean, so I worked all through the pandemic, you know.
Ah, well,
Yeah.
thank you for your service because whether
Well,
it's a big role or a small role, it is vital, especially during something like the coronavirus. So thank
mhm.
you for taking those risks.
Well, I have wonderful coworkers. I've got great people I'm working for, I'm working with, and it makes it a lot easier. I hate doing terminal cleans, mind you, because very time consuming, frustrating, but nonetheless, I don't hate going to work, and that's kind of rare.
Yeah, that it's so important to do something that is of service to the rest of the world
Yeah.
uh, and enjoy doing it.
Hmm.
So that's in a special category. You're
Yeah.
you're very fortunate to have found something that is noble to do and is rewarding.
Hmm. Now the podcasting, I do this for fun. It's just, I would have been 2 years old the year this came out. I was born in 1972, so and I got to see it at an outdoor screening a few years ago, and which was nice to see it with a crowd of people, and so I've always been fond of this movie. I love the fact that Mel Brooks was able to make it black and white, and he
Yeah,
won that fight with the studio to make it black and white, and it was the right decision to do so. And I think this movie again holds his test of time, and I think it's his greatest work. And he's done others, yep, but I think this is his greatest. I put this number one for Mel Brooks as Young Frankenstein, and you got to be part of that experience. So
I did. I was very fortunate. I'm very pleased to have been a part of it.
absolutely. Well, you know what? I'm so happy to have you come on here. Of course, Tommy Kovac, Splat from the Past, hooked us up. He asked me because if I wanted a guest from Young Frankenstein, I was like, is there anybody around? But I knew Terry Garr was not doing well health wise, and when he had mentioned you, when he mentioned who you were, and I was like, okay, I say yes. Absolutely, absolutely, you know. And I'm so glad I was able to have you on here today and talk about this. How many times a year do you watch this?
Well, they normally show it around the time of Halloween.
Hmm.
So I've seen it tons of times.
To the point where you can quote it now, huh?
Yeah,
There you go. And there's got a lot of lines to quote. Well, before I let you go, would you mind doing a plug for my show?
sure.
Just state your name and say you're listening to Greg Gilbert on Python's Paradise.
Okay. My name is Randolph Dobbs, and you're listening to Greg Gilbert on Python's Paradise.
Absolutely. And folks, check out Rando Dobbs in Young Frankenstein. Yes, and he is one of the villagers. Villager number 3, Joe. I like they gave you a name.
Yeah, I didn't mention, but there was a scene with the villagers where I had more to say, and that got cut out also. Again, I don't mind at all because Mel he's great. He's a genius with timing, and my section kind of slowed the scene down, so it got cut out.
You know what though? You're still in it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah, like it's not like the other movie where you got cut completely. And besides, this was a bigger movie, so hey,
yeah.
all the power to you on that one. Well, I want to wish you a Merry Christmas. and
Thank
a healthy and and happy 2023 as we close on this, because this is my record year for doing these interviews. And yes, we are closing in on it. So I wish you a happy 2023. Merry Christmas to you. What do you want for Christmas?
Well, I guess it would be great if the war in Ukraine could come to an end. That would be a great gift, a great Christmas gift for the whole world.
You know what? We got a few Ukraine workers at the hospital, and some good folks. We
Yeah.
I've worked with a few of them there, and I love my Ukraine coworkers. Yep.
Well,
Yep,
let's let's,
absolutely.
let's hope that the war ends soon.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's very pointless. War often is pointless. It usually starts over something pointless, but nonetheless, yes, well, let's hope that it ends.
Yeah.
But anyway, I bid you a great day. Thank you so much,
Thanks
Randolph,
very
and
much.
absolutely.
I wish you and your fans the very best. Thank you.
Thank you very much. God bless you. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.